everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight. And thank you to the Directors Guild for letting us all gather to talk to our nominees about all the great work that was done over the past year. So let's go ahead, congratulate our nominees, and welcome Steve Asen and Catherine Bigelow and Ian Pons Jewell. And if you guys want to go ahead and come to the screens, great. And Henry Alex Rubin. And I'm going to be asking everyone some questions tonight, but also feel free to ask each other some questions too, because it's just so nice when we can gather with directors and be able to talk about all the work that we've been doing. So the first thing I was going to talk about was in looking at the work that was done over this past year, there was such a variety of different projects. And we had everything from drama to comedy, doc style, PSAs, smaller personal stories, as well as these larger anthems. And through all the pieces, there was definitely an element of empathy and connection. And I thought it was really interesting, for example, Steve and Ian, both of you filmed spots that had to deal with sleep. And I thought that that really kind of spoke to this collective need that we have for respite and taking time for ourselves right now. And Catherine, your piece, Hollywood in Your Pocket, really speaks to, I think, people's desire right now to really create something and to be able to express themselves and share that. And Henry, your piece with the Sandy Hook Promise brought up so many questions about how can we come together as a community and support our survivors, as well as try and enact some change. So through all of this storytelling, there was this nice empathy and this shared understanding and connection. First question I want to ask each of you is, what connected you to these particular projects and what made you decide to take these on? And Catherine, do you want to start us off?
I have to say it was really an interest in genre, so to speak. I mean, just kind of parachuting into these various genres and then seeing where it took us. You know, you've got, and that, I don't know, I think that was for me, it was kind of a fun exercise. And to also use a piece of equipment that was so kind of user-friendly and just, you know, nimble and the opportunity to parachute into these different genres with like a very nimble piece of equipment. So, and then back up and look at the process of filmmaking, I suppose, through this lens of these different genres, you know, kind of to break the fourth wall in every single genre.
Yeah, that's great. And then Ian, what about for you? You had a few pieces this year in the mix, and they were all like fairly different in terms of the tonalities. What drew you to the projects that you filmed?
Yeah, so I think initially it's always if it feels like, it feels like something that I can get stuck into properly rather than if it feels restricted. But honestly, an initial thing is, does it work with, because there was a bit of restriction on where we're going, it's like, is it going to be possible to do it where I'm shooting already? That's always been one of them. But I think initially it's always just if I think the creative's good and if it connects in that sense, and then it's kind of go from there really. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And Henry, you've done multiple projects with Sandy Hook Promise. What drew you to this particular piece?
I guess with those guys, I've been shooting PSAs for them for I think maybe 6-7 years now. And I guess once I had my own children, the strangely high number of school shootings, you know, here in this country makes you nauseous, I guess, maybe is the best word. And so all I know how to do is, you know, shoot stuff, film stuff. So I've given, I'm sure all of us here gives a little bit of pro bono time making PSAs. So it's sort of like, what's the thing that you can try to shine a light on to make other people notice? And for me, this one really, cut close to home. So that's why I keep making them for these guys. They're also wonderful collaborators. They're very free. They let us really do what we want to do.
Yeah, and it's such a powerful and poignant piece too. Steve, for you, can you talk to us about what you felt the connections were to the scripts that you were getting and why you decided to take these on?
Yeah, the Mattress Firm one was a great script, and I pitched it like 3, maybe 4 years ago, and I won it, and I was really excited because it had this wonderful tone about it, and it was different. And then it went away. Like we got a call to say that it's gone, and that was one of the ones we were talking about earlier before we came on about, you know, stuff that kind of went away, and then it came back, and I was having to pitch on it again. And I did, and I got it. So that was great. And then Liev was attached, and he was fun, and it was still kind of dark and wonderful and mysterious. So yeah, it was the kind of content of the script. And then the Miller stuff was creatives that I had worked with before, and they have a taste for making things by hand. So there were these worlds that people disappear through and move through, and they're like, you can't use any special effects. You know, they're obsessed with that kind of stuff. So it's kind of fun, and it's a challenge, and it's ridiculous. So, you know, that was my attraction to those.
Okay, great. Yeah, actually, let's go a little deeper into the sleep anthem piece, because that opening scene where it's that deserted, silent street, and then over the top of it, here comes Ray Donovan wearing a suit, and he's sitting upright on this moving bed, and he just starts talking. How did
it's nice and trippy, yeah.
How did Liev Schreiber come to be attached to that project, and also what was the collaboration like with him?
I'm not sure how he became attached, but the collaboration was great. You know, we talked on the phone early on, and he was straight up about it. You know, here I am, this is my face doing a commercial, and you know, what's the reason for that, and let's make it fun, and let's make it, you know, interesting. And he had a lot of fun theories about this kind of presenter that while thinking it's a serious, you know, like giving it to you in a serious way, is also suffering from it. So his contribution, I took that and worked with that a little. You know, and then I already had my own ideas around it, and then but that worked into it nicely because you know, he has to speak the whole time, you know, and go through this world. So yeah, we just analyzed that a little bit, not too much, just, you know, the fact that he's suffering from it while he's trying to tell you a serious message about, you know, a problem.
Shooting.
yeah, it was fun. Yeah, well, you know, nights can be fun to a point, but it was mostly fun.
Yeah, that's so true. Catherine, for your piece, Hollywood in Your Pocket, what was one of the great things about it was, and you spoke to this earlier, was how many genres you got to cover. And even though it was very compact storytelling, it was also so robust. Each genre felt very robust and realized and alive. And, you know, what was, did you have a favorite genre out of all the ones you covered? And then also I'd love to ask you, was there one that was which was the most challenging one also?
You know, what was interesting was kind of dipping your toe into all of them, like doing features. Obviously, that would be years for one. You know, it'd be like science fiction would be 2 or 3 years. And then, so it was so wonderful over 5 days to kind of dip your toe into these different genres. And I just had so much fun making this. You know, that was, I think, what was both unique and unexpected. I didn't think I didn't think it's going to be fun enough, and it was just so fun and enjoyable, and like pulling back on science fiction and seeing what makes the monster shadow, and just things like that are just kind of, you know, that we all know and do without you know, tremendous amount of consciousness, but yet it's really fun to show that and see it, I think, and enjoyable anyway. Yeah, which one was most challenging? Probably, and of course, I love Westerns. I mean, we were talking about Near Dark earlier, and that was probably the most enjoyable. At least there wasn't really a big challenge other than to get it all done in the time frame. And I don't know, how's the guy going to jump out the window? Well, you put a false wall up and jump. It's just, in other words, you're gonna figure it out somehow. It's
How much time did you have to do it?
5 days.
That's pretty good.
And a lot of time. Yeah.
Was it a genre a day kind of thing?
Yeah, except no, one day I had Western and science fiction.
Ooh.
I know. I was nervous that day. But I'm trying to think. Yeah. I mean, there was action, and then, that had a day to itself, the running down the hallways, because we were on location. The other was staged, and then of course war was out, on location. And of course had a rainstorm come in, which was fine. We just went with it. And that's where Greg Fraser, the cinematographer, was, he's just game. He's down for anything. And I had a great AD in Arlie Bordas. So I was very lucky on that one.
Yeah. And were all the genres already scripted when you got this project, Catherine, or did they sort of evolve and develop over time?
No, they were really collaborative. I mean, it was kind of like, well, what genres are you interested in? So I kind of rattled off these and then wrote little little scripts. I mean, not that they're elaborate, wrote little scripts, and that's what we shot. I mean, they were wonderful. Media Arts Lab was wonderful to work with, I have to say. It's my favorite commercial experience for sure.
Nice.
Yeah, that's so great to hear. I want to shift over a little bit and Henry, speak to you about your piece with Sandy Hook Promise. One of the things that was so powerful about that piece was the use of that song Teenage Dream, which is the Katy Perry song. And I think a lot of us really kind of think of that song as an anthem for youth, and sort of like when you have your whole life in front of you and this limitless possibility, and then to see it again reconfigured through the stories of these young adults who've had so much taken from them so quickly. I was curious about the song choice itself. Was that something that was already part of the project? And also, can you talk a little bit about how, because each person has a verse, and can you speak a little bit about how you decided who was going to sing what verse and how this was going to come together?
Yeah, absolutely. That song, we're surprised that Katy Perry said yes to us. Of course, that it was just the creatives over at BBDO are constantly, trying to hatch up what is the next way that we could get people to pay attention to this issue. And I mean, if you guys don't already know, that Sandy Hook Promise is not about gun legislation. It's about making people wake up and see the signs of potential school shooters. And there's a lot of them. You would never know, but unless you follow these guys and listen to their advice. And they go, from school districts talking about how to make communities safer. So the creators are always, all year long, they are coming back to me. We've all become friends. And so this was just one of several ideas. And it, seemed very far away because you have to reach Katy Perry and you have to pitch it to her, and you have to get her to say yes, and then you have to get her publishing, people to say yes, and all those things. And so it always seemed like a bit of a bridge too far, that one. But someone reached her. I don't know who, and it might have been Nicole Hockley at Sandy Hook project. I'm not sure, but she said yes. So that gave us the wings to try out this different format for PSA, which was sort of a little bit of a hybrid doc music video. We'd always wanted to do something with survivors, and so this seemed like a sort of a nightmarish spin on this song that we all grew up with. And so we just sort of gave it a shot, not really knowing what it would look like or how to direct it, or if it would be just terrible, because it just seems like such a bad idea. Take a Katy Perry song, get a bunch of people who've been shot and make something, it just sounds horrible. So I feel like blessed that people didn't hate it, and people,
Oh hell no, it landed hard. That, like, I had just moved back to New Zealand, and I have 2 daughters. And when I watched everybody's work this year for the nominees, I almost flew away again. It was like, I was like, well, I didn't realize, you only hear about the big shootings, and I didn't realize that there was one in 2018 down the road. There was one in 2016 in, not far. So
yeah, I mean, I won't depress
the
you.
concept worked. The concept of putting them together was powerful for sure.
Thank you. I mean, that's BB, the creatives at BBDO. I mean, they're everyone wants to, if you're gonna put your own time and money in something, you want to do something that has as much meaning or impact as humanly possible. And so we try every year. We just try to get people to like listen to this. But thanks, Steve.
Yeah, and Ian, for the work that you did that was in the package, you had stuff from Apple Watch and Squarespace and Instacart too. And what was so interesting was that the creative felt so different from production to production, and also for the tonal shifts too. The Apple Watch stuff, the sleeps piece feels really ethereal and very soothing, but then the Instacart piece felt very energetic and was like crackling with this like kind of rhythm and cadence. When you go from production to production where the creative feels so different and so tonally different, how do you approach those?
I think it's because of the creative. It's pulling the thread and going that way, but also probably being sort of your own worst enemy as a director and judging yourself and worrying that you're making the same work then pushes you to, right, how can we do this differently? A lot of it is talking with my DP Mauro, who I always work with on a lot. How we shoot it a bit differently from the next time. There's stuff we haven't done before, and keeping commercials as that the ability to play in it. And we've got an amazing team that for it. I mean, all those were shot in Ukraine, apart from Squarespace, which was Georgia, but still with a Ukrainian team. And it's just killer teams, really doing everything, pushing the boat out, really. So yeah.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit more about that Instacart spot you did, because that it feels like it had so much scope and had so many moving pieces on it. You spoke about your teams, and specifically, can I ask you about your collaboration with your AD? Because I feel like our ADs are so invaluable to the process. And when you have a project like that that has so much scope to it, how did you approach that, and what was your collaboration like on that?
Great, yeah. So Instacart was the AD's called Dennis Sonin. He's long-time AD. When I first started shooting in Ukraine, he was on the initial project, and so we've got a long, comparatively long to working relationship and friendship, and he's. The process, we know each other very well. He doesn't, and the process is just everything's. There's never issues ever, like classic killer AD. When there's a problem, solved. With Instacart, we had a healthy shoot time schedule with moving around. So it wasn't challenging in terms of scheduling. It was more people wrangling for like the queues and in weird places, and like the strange park that we shot in to like create the false. And he's brilliant with that as well. So for the most part, he's really lean on him on when it's bigger crowd stuff as well. Yeah. And shout out to Alexis as well, who did Squarespace. Yeah.
That's great too. And then speaking of collaboration, Catherine, can we talk about a little bit more about you and your DP working together on this. You mentioned how fun it was, and I think that's really palpable when viewers see this spot. It just looked like it was so much fun being able to cover all these genres. And obviously, this is a very mobile, nimble camera. So we'd love to hear how you both approached this filmmaking with this camera.
Well, it was, I mean, I don't know how much time Greg had with the camera before we started shooting, because I think he was flying in from somewhere. So we were both kind of, there was kind of a learning curve on the shoot day, but because we have a shorthand and we had worked together before, it was a really kind of fluid process, and we were able to kind of adjust and I don't know, just kind of find it really organically, I think, in the process of filming. And I just so love working with him. It's just, I don't know, he kind of like completes my thoughts, and I try to complete his, not that I'm capable of it, but anyway, he's just a really, he's really got such a great eye. And so that was really fun. Again, trying to find these shots and then back up from these shots so we could use the camera in the shot. In other words, you're constantly breaking the fourth wall. It's like it was sort of very meta. That's what we kept talking about when we were shooting. Okay, we're shooting this, but at the same time, we're shooting the shooting of this. So it was this kind of constant meta experience. And then at the same time, so that just made it kind of, I suppose, intellectually interesting, like what's the process of the process?
Yeah, it's a very layered piece. And did you, that's interesting that you're talking about how both of you kind of found a lot of things on the day. It felt like also with some of the things that were on there, like there's a lot of flares and smoke and bright lights. And did you use any kind of unique camera rigs to do the tracking or, the crane kind of shots with basically such a small camera?
Yeah, well, he had these kind of mounts that he would like run after the guy down the hall who's going to jump out the window. And it was this really, small little, maybe 12-inch long mount that he could. And so it was, I kind of, and I know we did a making of, and I know I mentioned this in that it sort of really is a new cinematic language that this can potentially create, because it's just so easy. It is in your pocket. You pull it out and do a tracking shot, do a, I suppose you could, anything you can imagine, you can kind of do. The potential for that, anyway, is there because of how versatile and how, how small it is.
Yeah, I think I was going to say that I think a lot of new filmmakers also probably really love that, and we're so inspired by it as well. Steve, hey, can we talk about the Miller Lite stuff that you had mentioned earlier, your campaign? I thought it was so intriguing that you were saying how they wanted to do everything kind of practically. And you have in both of the spots, there's those great sequences where, somebody in the awards one where the guy is like pulled into the ground and seems to be traveling through the bowels of the earth, and there's lava and the fossilization. Yeah. How did you execute that? And
so
also
we did cheat, because I said earlier they said no CGI. So we cheated at the end of that one with the big wide, obviously, with the lava and the dinosaur stuff, but everything else we did in a big set. So I had the pleasure of working in Wellington with a lot of people that were Peter Jackson's gang on the rings, like the production designers, Simon Bright and Ben Colson and like all of these talented people. And they had just spent 2 years doing Avatar 2, where they spent a lot of time in a blue world, moving, things, small increments, and so that and so it was kind of like releasing the hounds from the blue world on practical stuff again. So they were incredible. They went crazy. They worked really hard, and they made everything. And I would just come in each day blown away constantly by how they made it. So we made this kind of slide for the guy to go down with fake dirt all through it and put things in the wall. And they were getting their hands really dirty. Like even the production designer level people were getting them involved and, getting amongst it. And then we made this full photocopy thing that went like this, and we ran the guy through, and we kind of learned as we went. It was very tactile and very hands-on and fun. I loved it. We also put a young woman through a sofa. She went backwards through a sofa in another one, and traveled through the innards of a sofa past kind of Walkmans and coins and keys and stuff that we just threw at her. So, we did things like with that one, we did it vertically, and we dropped things on her and pulled her up, and then we put it sideways. So there was like, and then the dirt one was a slide. So yeah.
That's like a pretty fun day on set. Wait, what about the guy who goes to the copier and his clothes?
Yeah. We can be mean to actors in New Zealand. You can't do it here.
I was going to ask you how many takes you did on that.
We did quite a few. He was kind to us because it definitely wasn't comfortable. We were pulling him over rollers, and we were being mean to him. And he was like, and we had to adjust the rollers sometimes because he said, no, that one will literally break my thigh bone. Because I would draw these things, his body goes through like this, but a body doesn't go through like that. Yeah,
actually, that going off of that, how much was this pretty much all storyboarded, Steve, or how did you,
Yeah, I do tend to storyboard. Yep. Recently, I've on a couple of projects, but yes, with that, yep, detailed storyboards. A couple of projects recently, I've been trying to just take photos and then writing shot lists underneath to try and pull away from getting fixated on a drawing. But with those, because it was quite technical, yes.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel that now that you're moving away from that a little bit more, does that feel a little more freeing for yourself?
Well, it's kind of exciting. I'm sure people do it in film more, but with commercials, you have to show the board to so many people. Everybody wants to see how it's going to work, and they want to know exactly how it's going to work. And so I do have to ask agencies if, hey, I'm not, and it's usually with people I've worked with before, I'm not going to storyboard this. I'm just going to take a photo of the location, and I'm going to write underneath what we're going to shoot. And some people are excited by the freedom of that, and then you can do it.
Yeah, it's so interesting how much of it was done practically too.
Yeah, it really is. It's really is good fun to do it that way. Like we pulled, people through things with lines, and I had done it in commercials in the past before, and quite often not actors as well. That's also fun to pull people who are just, street cast sometimes, like pull them through things and be mean to them. That's really funny.
And then going off of that, Henry, for your piece too, just in terms of working with your DP in terms of how you were going to approach filming this and the way that it was going to look. And then also curious also for you, I know you mentioned that it was kind of an organic process. How much of it was sort of prepped and planned beforehand in terms of like what you were going to be planning on shooting?
Well, we didn't have any money to really do what we wanted, so we wanted to go and film all these kids in all their different homes. They're kids here from Ohio and Washington and Santa Fe and Florida from shootings, that sadly have happened all over the U.S. So, but then we didn't have the budget or the time, so what we did was we asked them to just show us photographs of their rooms, try to paint the rooms the right way, try to get trophies and books and posters and artwork to emulate their rooms. But we shot it in just one home somewhere, in the backwoods of New Jersey, with someone who, liked the cause and gave us their house for very little. And I think we had a Steadicam that broke, so we just had to sort of improvise. And then the DP who I love, who gave me his time, is Dave Devlin, and he just tried to light every room slightly differently so that you wouldn't get in your head that we were cheapos that just went to one house and, you know, did it all in one house, I guess. But I also wanted to take the opportunity to say that my AD on this, who is a wonderful and hilarious man, Anthony Domino, who I love very much and have worked with for like, I think 15, 16 years now. And Anthony, I always tease him because he's always conveniently busy during these freebie PSA jobs. He's always got like a 10-day, 12-day shoot with Tractor. And so every time, you know, it's like going on my 6th or 7th free shoot, I'm like cajoling him and making him feel as guilty as humanly possible. You know, really, you can't come again. And so finally, I feel like I got him his schedule right, and he flew himself out. God bless him, and I think he's like stayed with a friend, and he is the perfect person for projects like this. I mean, there's a lot of wonderful ADs. Someone brought Arlie, who I love as well. You know, you need not just those sort of like staff sergeant guys who can or gals who can like bark orders, but you need really empathetic people too, who can maybe be empathetic when you don't have time because you're dealing with some mishap. And he brought a lot of empathy to this, and he brought all those kids together. And you know, it took us over a year to just find these kids. That was my producer Alina, who just indefatigable would call the mothers and then call the fathers and talk to them for hours, trying to convince them to just participate in this because it was a good cause. So there's a lot of empathy, a lot of generosity, a lot of time that goes into making, you know, these PSAs. And an AD is obviously so key, and you have to treat all these kids like, you know, with such
situation,
with such love and generosity, because they're not actors, you know, and you have to make sure that they meet each other and they have a good time, and they did. They didn't want to separate once they'd all met.
I have a quick question. Is that all right?
Yeah, of course.
So on the set with that, because it is a bold idea to, like you said earlier, to sing, to speak this Katy Perry song, and they're actually survivors. Were there some even at the point where they were on set where they were kind of questioning whether this was good, or were they understanding it from off the bat? Do you know what I mean, as a concept?
I think they all wondered what their line would be. And they all came, and I said, you can say whatever, you can sing or you can speak, you can say whatever line has any resonance for you. And you know,
Right.
one kid who was very, very shy, but I think had a really fulfilling time. His name was Chase, and he chose the line, "I can't sleep," because he literally has a lot of problems sleeping. He has a bullet lodged in his heart, and he also has one lodged in his skull. And it gives him headaches, and it keeps him from sleeping. So each line, you know, "Don't ever look back" was is the chorus, and you know, the parents of Alex Dorrit, Nick Dorrit, who was killed at Parkland, wanted to sing that line. So it was like I way before they got there, they knew the concept, and they
got it. Yeah, they got it early on.
What do you guys want to do? And you know, if you think singing's cheesy, don't sing. You know. The kid in the wheelchair, Nick, he was like, I have a terrible voice. I'm just going to speak. Okay. I said, sure. You know,
It's such a powerful work, Henry. It really is.
It really is. Yeah.
Just.
thanks, Catherine. Thank you. Detroit's a masterpiece. It reduced me to tears. It did. The end of that movie. Whew. Anyway, but I feel like every time it gets to me, I'm like dragging the thing down into a sad topic. I mean, the truth is that these kids all met each other and they had a really wonderful time. And I hope that it was a little bit healing, this film we made for them.
Yeah, it's so lovely to hear
That's
that
awesome.
they all were able to come together and have and be able to bond like that, and be able to carry that also with them, like after the filming as well. You know, Henry, I'm curious about the final vignette in that piece where it is the family, and they're all together, and the mom says the line, "Don't ever look back," and the dad gives her a kiss, and they're holding a picture of one of their deceased sons, and one of their surviving sons is with them as well. Can you just speak a little bit about that it was just so powerful that there was a family that was in the piece as well.
Yeah, it felt like there's so, school shootings affect so many people. It's not just the kid who has a scar. It's like there were a lot of people who said to us, just because we don't have a scar doesn't mean that we aren't wounded inside. And that's why there was one kid, Carlos, who was unscathed, but psychologically very hurt because a lot of his schoolmates were killed, and he heard them die. And there was another girl, Isabella, who died underneath a friend. So those people may not have physical scars, but they have trouble for the rest of their lives. That family lost their young son, was shot in the neck, Alex, but survived, and Nick, the older one, died. So it took them a long time to agree to be in this piece. They really went back and forth, but in the end, they trusted Leah, who they were speaking to, and they trusted me, and they wanted to participate. And I thought it was really profound to have a family there just sitting on the bed, because that's what families do on Saturdays and Sundays. Like, you just sit around in bed, you watch TV, but here's a family watching, or singing a strange song to a stranger, me, in the middle of New Jersey. The whole thing is very strange. And, we just cross our fingers and hopes that maybe a few people see it and maybe it does something helpful,
Yeah, no, I definitely think everyone who saw it was definitely moved by it, and such a wonderful, powerful piece. Speaking along the lines of this collaboration and the trust that we have with our teams, Ian, can we talk a little bit also about some of the locations that you were in and what it was like working with the crews? And also, because you do have so many pieces, I'm so curious about, of all the pieces that we saw tonight, was there one particular scene or piece that was particularly challenging to execute?
Yeah, so they were, it's pretty, tragic. They're all shot in Ukraine, which is now completely decimated. And the whole crew is, completely displaced. So it's, really bizarre to see, the actual locations being there. Like, it's a really incredibly special place for locations, because you've got this really strange mix of stuff. Apple's ECG was like the lake at the end it's all real. It was freezing cold, beautiful park lake that we shot in. We just kept it as it was. It wasn't meant to be frozen, but we just went with it and kept this kept it as it was. So I'm trying to think what else. The Squarespace was also with they're all research productions with our close partners in Radioactive, who are they're absolutely incredible people. And Squarespace was done in Georgia, which is it's a neighboring country. And they all come over, and we work with an amazing Georgian team called Metro Productions. And what was great there was the Squarespace one was a chance. It was all locations, and it was all completely sporadic, from a cafe to a doja therapist to this. So it was a chance to show, it was to really try and show off what's possible in Tbilisi in Georgia, which is another favorite place to go for me to shoot. I've shot there once before, but and the challenge with that was how it's classic, right? Creating generic Western thing, but no, maybe not a particular place, but then also it not look like it's in Tbilisi, Georgia. So that's with some smart production design from Robin Brown on that one. Yeah. So that answers it.
Yeah, and speaking of like talking about with our teams and the trust that we have with them and the camaraderie that is often built on film sets, let's talk a little bit more also about the collaboration with our actors too. Did you, Steve, for your pieces, did you cast in person? Did you cast remotely? How did that work?
I did. So for the one here, the mattress firm, I had to look at 300 to 400 people at home putting themselves, because no one was going into, this was April last year, no one's going into casting studios. So it was actually about that was quite bizarre to like people want the job and they're trying out for it and you're looking at their house. So it was kind of bizarre, it was like, it was really quite personable and it was almost like street casting, even though they're people who have done things before and acted, yeah. So I cast that way. And then in New Zealand, I was in New Zealand at the time, so I came here in April to shoot that. And then the Miller one was before that when I was in New Zealand, which was completely open at the time. So we were just casting in the normal situation, And with commercials, I tend to like to street cast as much as I can because my theory is that we deal in seconds. We don't deal in any space length of time. And I can pretty much get a performance out of anyone in 2 seconds, or 3 seconds. So I like the challenge of taking people who may not have acting experience or very little, and or haven't got or does have acting experience but don't get a lot of runs at it because it's exciting and you get great faces and you get a little bit of difference out of it. So yeah, I do try and do that.
Yeah, and then also for the casting, you mentioned you were remotely looking at 200 or 300 people essentially. What were the challenges you found casting remotely, just not being able to be in sort of a physical space with your actors while you're auditioning?
Yeah, because I like, yes, a physical space, yes, because even when I first came to the States and we did callbacks, we never did callbacks in New Zealand for commercials. So I'd just go that one and they'd go, okay, cool. And so I had to go to callbacks, and because people were coming back in, I would get up and shake their hand and talk with them, and then everyone in the room's going, why is he engaging? Why is he getting into this and wasting like time? There's a lot of people to come in. So I quite liked that. So yeah, it was harder to do it through the camera because I do like to engage with them and make them feel comfortable very fast, especially because a lot of people, like I said before, may not have a lot of acting experience because I'm choosing for a look or an interesting character. So yeah, so it is harder. I can't remember how I did it. It just was a bit more tedious, because I couldn't engage physically.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then Catherine, what about for you? Were you also casting in person or did you do a lot of this remotely? How did you handle that?
No, pretty much all of it was remote. And then even though we'd cast somebody, like on the day, they might have come up with a positive COVID test. So we had to recast like within minutes. And that's where, again, having a great, team behind you, like Arlie Bordas. I mean, we just like, all right, wait, this was our runner-up. Let's go for that person. I mean, it was again, we kind of kept it very fluid. We're very fluid, but yeah, pretty much all remotely.
Yeah, and did ever, that's something, I mean, I'm sure everybody's really familiar with these little pauses that we've been taking just during COVID with testing and everything. Did any of it, did that ever happen like on the actual shoot day, Catherine, or was this all sort of?
That was on the shoot day.
Okay. Oh, so
I'm like, well, where is X? It's like, she tested positive. Like, okay, so who else? Then which is why on that day I was originally going to start with the Western sequence, which would have required a little bit longer time to light and the set. So we started with the science fiction sequence, which was on the same day, because we were trying to get the cast for the Western sequence in time. So, and these are the kind of wonderful exigencies of shooting. But yeah, it was, the COVID situation was interesting because there are always these variables, that you can't control. But, I guess we're all sort of used to that.
Yeah. Henry, for you, when you were filming yours, was that ever an issue as well? Sort of like the pausing that so many productions have had to do, whether it was, either in prep or as on the actual days of filming?
I mean, this haunts us constantly. I mean, we just hadn't experienced. I mean, it happened today. I'm shooting right now, and someone just tested positive, so we're panicking. What else is new? So we're going to the second choice. I'm calling the second choice. Can you get here? Oh, you're in Montreal. Can you get in your car now? Can you drive? How many hours? That's fine. Yeah. I mean, I'm just hoping and praying that we're through this. I mean, and I feel like very lucky, like all of you guys who kept directing during quarantine, that we were able to do a lot through this. And I mean, I started discovering the joys of a remote director's scout.
Yeah.
And the truth is, you could see everything. You don't even. I mean, it's better to be there because then you discover little nooks and crannies that the person there in the hazmat suit isn't necessarily filming on video. But there's a lot of stuff you can do through this. And yeah, I mean, with our cast, they were all very okay with flying to New York City. It was more us New Yorkers that were just so terrified, and we had all these rules. But a lot of them were like, hell yeah, we want to get out of quarantine and come shoot this thing with you guys. Yeah. So the parents were excited to have an excuse to get on a plane to come to see us.
Yeah, and so for the remote scouts that you've done, and curious also for our other directors too, is that usually just somebody FaceTiming you, kind of taking you through all the different spaces and looking at everything?
I mean, I've been trying to rope my AD into it. The person I trust the most, my producer and my AD, and if they're there already, and they can take me through some. But as right now, that's already over. We're already able to fly to places again. So it was like a brief moment of respite where I could stay at home as long as humanly possible because of COVID, and then just arrive at the very last minute. But now it's back to doing things properly. Yeah. And showing up. But yeah.
I had one good experience because I was like, there's no way I'm remote directing ever. And then I did it because I actually left New Zealand and came back here in November for some jobs, and had a job that I had prepped in New Zealand, and I chose to remote direct it. But the one thing I liked about it is that I wasn't in a chair with like a box next to me and I'm looking for my stuff and I can't lay everything out. And I had all of these dialogue ideas. And often, if I'm on set, there'll be a good portion of those dialogue ideas that have hit the ground. But like I'll awake in the night going, "Oh, I forgot to get them to try that." Here with remote, I could just brief the crew, turn it on mute, and then have this giant table with everything laid out with all of my dialogue notes, everything. Like I had all of this space, and then I also find for myself, particularly on set, not that I'm ever going to get into remote shooting, but that there's so much energy and so much full-onness and so much noise that I can't not hear somebody tell someone something else over here. So I just had I would just talk to them and they'd go for the setup and I'd put it on mute and I had silence and I would just look at my boards and look at my notes, and I could it was like the most focused I think I've ever been. So I don't know, maybe I'm going to have a caravan that comes, like a tiny little one, just that can fit anywhere that I go in now. I don't know.
And when you are on set or on location, Steve, when you're actually filming, are you generally at Video Village or are you off somewhere with monitors? Where do you tend to like to be?
Near the camera, yeah, somewhere near the camera.
Yeah, and then yeah, and Ian, how about for you? When you're filming, do you tend to be off in monitors? Or do you how do you float near Video Village? How do you collaborate with the agency?
I got so used to having agency remote it's really weird for me now to have on set. I find it like really strange. Like I must have done all my last like a bunch of jobs, just no one's there, and it's been, not to be rude, like it's been amazing because it's sort of you're it not amazing. It sounds weird. The cool thing about it is like you're not, when you're, it's like, you have to, you act differently when you've got your boss around, like that example. So, and then when you haven't, it's like the equivalent of doing like a short film, but with like really good resources. And it's like, sometimes you get on so well with an agency, it feels like that anyway. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's just, I don't know, if you do an Apple job, it's, it's like working for the CIA. You got like QR codes at the start, security people watching you, like checking you haven't done anything. It's like the hardcore version of that. And I actually got to do this. That I've done that, and then I've also recently did one like that was like super hardcore. And then the one up in the nomination, we did 3, and all of those were they actually were remote, and they're amazing creatives. Worked with them on Apple Watch, and on this one they let us do. They didn't travel, and it actually went really well. So yeah, it's kind of so. And then when they are on set, generally, I think it always is the best thing. If it was like you could go and talk about the day at the beginning and go through everything, and then I go off and then kind of just crack on really. And I've got an amazing producer, John Adams, does a lot of the comms between us. But otherwise, I'm just like blah, 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 unless I have to go and explain something. Yeah, it's kind of how I work.
Yeah, and then Steve, for your shoots as well, were there people piping in remotely? Do you feel that you're pretty comfortable with that now, or has everyone?
I have to say I do sporadically shoot. Like I'm writing TV in between, and so I don't mind if I go a month or 2 without a job. Like I'm writing film and TV with my partner Jane, and so I didn't do a ton of remote shoots. I kind of got, I managed to kind of come back and shoot one here in person, but the Miller one was, 22 people chiming in from the States, and they're very smart people, and they were very respectful, and we did a lot of talking beforehand. So, and I also think that's sometimes some of the time, I think if they were there in person, there probably would have been a few more, they would have challenged me a little more. They let me rip a little more, I think, because there's 22 of them in time zones that aren't very kind. They're like 3 in the morning and they're like, like, I don't know that they're as focused as they would be if they were on set. I do remember like a board of like 22 creatives and, clients on the thing. And there was one that was blacked out. The camera wasn't on, and we were trying to have a discussion, and then their camera came on briefly, and there was heaps of smoke in the room, and one of them had his head on the table like this, and the other one was just like this, and they were in the kitchen, and the whole agency went, "You guys aren't meant to be together." And they were like, they had gone over to, one of their creatives had gone to the other one's apartment, and I swear, I'm pretty sure they were smoking bowls in there. So, they didn't,
Awesome.
So you get a little bit of freedom from that.
That's so great. Hey, Catherine, on your sets as well, was there a lot of collaboration just given the nature of the creative, or how did that come about?
Well, I think the collaboration was really before we started shooting, and really integrating these various genres that are very discrete, but then finding a way to kind of knit them together, sort of braid them together a little bit. And the linkage, of course, is the song and the product and the meta aspect of it, so that's where they kind of linked up. So that was where I think the the mall was very creative and very collaborative. And then in shooting, I was really, pretty autonomous. It was a really good experience. And again, with the shorthand with Greg and with Arlie, I couldn't ask for a better experience, I have to say. So
yeah, it sounds like the production was fairly nimble as well, which is really nice.
yeah, I mean, we just had to kind of, you're always adjusting, but between COVID and weather, I don't know, it's sort of, not that the COVID worked for us, but the weather did. So you just, yeah, I mean, but that's the nature of filmmaking anyway. You're always, it's structured chaos.
Yeah, and it was great to see actually that how you guys took advantage of the rain day as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, to incorporate that into the filming too. That was really cool.
That was really a slog, but looked great on camera. So I was like, let's keep going. Anyway, that was good.
Yeah. Let's talk about post a little bit. Ian, your pieces, let's talk about the Instacart one. It had so many moving pieces within it. When you head into edit, do you have a pretty firm idea of how you are going to be editing the piece, or do you gather a lot of things and really shape it in the edit itself?
No, it's pretty locked down in the storyboarding. Although it's very designed up front, my editor Tobias Soom is a genius, and it's not like he's given an edit. It's given very strong pillars, and this is the sequence, and then he's just really getting all pacing and the juice in each thing. And a lot of what he's incredible at as well is his offline sound is amazing. So he's like, a lot of his work is also in sound pacing and making cuts work like that. Yeah, I mean, Instacart, the one in here is the like official 30, but there's my director cut is like nearly 3 minutes or something. It's a bit over the top probably. Yeah, it's kind of, and then VFX is some stuff will have previs. So Instacart had a really tight delivery for the post that was wanted. So the big city shot that pushes through all the billboards. So we just started to get that worked before we're even shooting. So it's basically some things happening simultaneously. Yeah.
And what about for you, Henry? How did this piece come together in post, and what was it like with the process of working with your editor on it?
Oh, that was Ian McKenzie. Thank you, Ian. He did it for free. He's usually, he's a comic master. So it was interesting to see him do something more, I guess, depressing. And what we were trying to find the shape to this thing. And the music video was almost like an interesting idea, but it didn't last long. After a few lines, you get it. It's the teenage dream, but it's a nightmare, and now you have to move on to another. You've got to further this idea, and so I think it was with Ian and in the edit that we proposed, why don't we, instead of saying who these people are up front, let's just not tell you who they are. Let's just meet them, have them sing or speak a few lyrics, and just let people scratch their heads for a second, think, what is this strange thing we're watching, and then tell you who they are and what happened to them. And that we just found in the edit. So that was, we sort of had to convince a few people, no, this is interesting. And then we got pushed back initially from a few people thinking, well, that the spot's over when you say the teenage dream isn't what it used to be, and then there's like another whole spot. And so that was Ian and I just sort of trying to get people on our side to convince them that this was unusual, maybe for PSA, and a little long, but interesting, different. So I have him to thank for that. And then, there was no post on this. We didn't have any money. I wish. I'd love to smooth out that crappy, awkward, broken Steadicam at times where you can really feel it. You're not supposed to feel Steadicam. You're supposed to just, So I watched some of those shots tonight, but it doesn't matter. Hopefully nobody cares. Nobody. You're your own worst critic, right? Hopefully.
Yeah, I think everybody was paying attention to the messaging, and it's really lovely to hear how many people donated their time as well, and for this, that's really lovely to hear. Steve, do you want to talk a little bit also about your collaboration with your editors on your pieces?
I can, yes. Well, Miller was distant, so it was Grant Sumi at Exile, and so it was kind of far, remotely. I haven't gone in a room with an editor for a really long time, and I used to do that early in my career, and I really enjoyed it, and I really, really miss it, I have to say. Like even before COVID, it's like, oh, the editor's in New York, and you're busy, you're shooting again or something,
Were you doing that via feed, or were you doing notes, or?
We would just get on Zoom a little bit. I didn't do anything real time with him. I would just talk, and then he would just go for it. Yeah. So he did an amazing job of creating the tone along with Michael Giolakis, the DP. Like together that they created a beautiful tone with it. I think like the kind of darkness I wanted. Okay, and everyone let us, be in that space. Sorry, that's the other one. Miller was like nutty. Sorry, that's Michael was Mattress Firm. I'm getting mixed up with the two. Yeah. And the editor on Mattress Firm was Gavin Cutler, who I've done a couple of way more ridiculous things with before. So this was more tonal, and he's a master with both. He can find what's kind of cool and is going to find a strange tone about things. He's good at finding an odd edge.
Steve, I loved the tone of that mattress spot, and I love the music. And I was wondering if you could talk about the music. It reminded me a little bit of the mood of that, of Ringen. Ringen, may he rest in peace. His spot for Puma After Hours, which was also so moody and wonderful. And that other spot where the Volkswagen drives through the empty city. You remember that one? It's got the once in a while these ads really grab you with their like moodiness.
That one was genius. The Volkswagen. That's like probably one of my favorites. Yeah. I have to say that the agency DDB Chicago were all that. That was they basically took that. Like I was busy and I would hear stuff and go great, but that was all them. They made that tone, which is I'm really thankful for as well. There was a spot Ian mentioned earlier that I did years ago for Old Spice that was ridiculous, but the music the agency put to it was very dark and serious. So it's like it's a blessing when you may not have the amount of time you'd want to engage in the music, and the agency are all there and they go there with it, so that's all them. They did a beautiful job of that. So yeah, I'm actually not even sure of who they worked with, which is naughty of me, but yeah, it is a great track. Yeah,
very naughty, but it's moody. I love it. I'd love to know who that composer is. It's cool.
It's fabulous.
Yeah, and actually, Catherine, your piece too had such a great track with it as well. How did that come to be? Was that something that evolved?
That was from Media Arts Lab. That was the first thing I got, was that track. And then the idea of this phone being able to film something that would emulate a Hollywood movie. And I'm thinking, okay, how do I work with that track? And and then I had this incredible editor, Kirk Baxter, and he just made it work. It was
he's great.
Yeah, it was just magic. I'm like, how did you do that, Kirk? It was really, again, it's remote, like you were saying, Steve. I haven't been in a room with the editor for 3 years probably, but which is really unfortunate because I love the editing process. But no, that track, Like a Movie, was that was the first thing I got. I'm like, okay, so we're gonna back into that song. But that was a great choice.
Yeah, it really it totally set the mood for that piece. And when you were editing, Catherine, you're talking about doing it remotely. Were you also doing it via Zoom or live feeds, or were you handling it with notes? How did you handle it?
No, live feeds. I mean, via Zoom, and you could work, and then just for periods of time, and then let Kirk work on his own, and then you see what he's done, and then you interact with him with a live feed. And it was pretty, I mean, it works. I didn't think it was going to necessarily, but it does, and that's the beauty, I think, of the commercial process, is you can work with all these people, and kind of explore all these different talents and collaborations that, some are really exciting, and you want to recreate that,
Yeah, what's been the most surprising thing about doing commercial work, Catherine, for you?
I think working with the crew, each time it's a different, and you're working with them mainly, as all of you, for the first time. Like, I never worked with Kurt, and I did a couple of things with Hank Corwin. I have worked with him before, but it's all the working with people for the first time. And I was lucky with Greg, because obviously I had worked with him before, but working with Arlie for the first time, working with, again, editors with sound, with like a sound crew that you haven't worked with before. So I think that's what's maybe the most instructional about it, and the most creative, inspirational about it, to work with these, don't get set with one. As wonderful as it is to repeat collaboration, I've never been prolific enough to be able to do that. So you turn what maybe is a deficit into something that's really productive and positive.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it was a great experience. So that seems really great. Okay, so we are getting the news now that our evening is coming to an end, and we want to thank all of our directors, as well as we want to congratulate also Bradford Young, who was unable to join us tonight, but congratulations on the nomination. And we want to thank everyone who's joined us. Thanks so much for sharing some time, and also a look into everyone's process into the making of the work this year.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. And
It's nice to meet you all.